Mike Florio was on with the morning show, Pro Football Talk. Here's what he had to say about, let's see, where do we want to go first here? Let's go with Aiyuk. Right. Let's go with Aiyuk because he's theoretically a question mark.
From Aiyuk's perspective, how many years do I have to put in before I get my reward? And even though he wasn't taken in the top 10 of the draft, when the NFL reconfigured the way they pay rookies in 2011 in order to avoid the Ryan Leafs, the Jamarcus Russells, the guys who get the big contracts and don't live up to them, the idea was for the guys who got drafted and didn't get a big contract, if you play well, you're going to get rewarded. You shouldn't have to wait 5 years. Yeah, I mentioned Joey Bosa. He got his after 3 years. Brandon Aiyuk has every right to say, what more do I have to do to get my long-term contract? And, it's very tempting for the team to ignore that and just say, hey, we have your contractual rights for 1 more year. There's nothing you can do about it, and then we'll decide what to do next year.
Right, so that's the option the 49ers have. They can just have Brandon Aiyuk come back and play on his final year, or they can extend him.
Yeah, I'm hoping I feel like Steiny, he's earned that chicken, and he's a part of your future. You would think. I mean, the guy, I don't want to say doesn't have any weaknesses, but he's a top 10 receiver to me in the league. Now, how they use him, that's different. But Steiny, I just wouldn't want him coming back, knowing I'm playing on one and done and I could get hurt or whatnot. So I'm like you. I expect something to be done this offseason. But as far as you saying they're going to be active, I'm curious. Like other areas, do they feel like they need corner help? How much does that cost? Who's out there that could come in and help them? And again, I just think they landed one of the biggest fish, if not the biggest fish last year, as far as D-line help in Hargrave. And here we are, they just lost another, good defensive lineman, Armstead. Not great, but how do they replace him? And with what?
The one thing that's got to be, I'm not saying cloaking this franchise, but we always talk about, and I mess with you about outside my pay grade and stuff like that. But the real issue for the 49ers isn't this year. It's Brock Purdy and what's going to happen with his play this year and what they're going to have to pay him.
Man.
Like the 49ers, I guarantee you, every decision they make this year will have that in mind. And what I'm talking about is what Mike Florio talked about this morning with the guys.
At some point, tiers need to develop. So what tier will Brock Purdy be on? Will he be on the top tier, $55, $60 million a year? Will he be on a lower tier? Whatever Kirk Cousins carves out, is that where he'll be? It's going to be complicated, but, the reality is the 49ers will have 1 more year under contract with him and the ability to franchise tag him twice before he could walk away. And that's part of figuring out value. And we'll see. I mean, the last time they had a great young quarterback in Colin Kaepernick, they paid him. They gave him a big contract. It wasn't as big as his camp tried to make it out to be, but when they have a guy who's getting it done, they know that there's a time where you have to pay him.
Wow. And that's why I was just looking at Baker Mayfield. We got Dak out there. If that's the going rate, let's just, again, Steiny, Brock Purdy controls it. I know there's going to be a lot of pressure just on him on how much money the Niners are willing to hand him. If he has, let's just say he duplicates what he did this year, how much is that worth to Kyle in the gang? But man,
let's
Baker just.
What do you think? Like, that's a great way to put it. If he essentially duplicates this past year, Purdy does, and they make another playoff run.
Do we get to the Super Bowl? Do they get to the Super Bowl?
Let's say they lose in the NFC Championship next year. See, but you know what? Let me stop you there because this is where I do really wonder. All right, so Brock Purdy has played a year and a half, and he's been very successful. They haven't won a Super Bowl, but he's been very successful. Okay, so you don't get to win a Super Bowl every year. So let's say the 49ers this year, they reload again, and they go 13-4.
Yeah, let's go.
Right? Let's say they make it to the post. Let's say they get to the Super Bowl. Are you telling me that the difference between winning a Super Bowl for Brock Purdy and losing a Super Bowl, like that game will determine, like by that point, it's almost got to be determined that you're going to pay the guy $40 million, right? Even if he loses a Super Bowl.
Well, see, it's nuanced, Donnie.
I know it is. That's why I set it up.
Quarterback like on an individual basis because we've seen, some mediocre quarterbacks, Brad Johnson,
So
and Trent Dilfer's
but that's
have
why
greatness around it and get him there. So,
but that's why I said I think that's a great point. Let's say Purdy is essentially has the same kind of year. Very good, right?
Okay.
Very good year.
All right.
Purdy has a very good year this
Well, you're probably
upcoming
getting 35 to 40 million then from me. If it looks like it did last year in regard to, let's just use touchdowns, interceptions, and command.
That might not get it done though anymore. 30 to 35.
You could be right, and that's why I said Dak is out there. But what's he going to be willing? What's his agent going to be trying to go? Is it going to be one? Is it going to be one of those things where, let me get this straight, I'm Mr. Irrelevant, and you guys are offering me 40. I'm good. Let's go. You know, it might not be I'm trying to take down the house.
No, I get that, but I also know if Brock Purdy has a great year, but the 49ers don't win it all. First of all,
he's golden.
If he has a great year and they win it all, so he can say, so wait a minute, I took over this team 2.5 years ago. We went to the NFC Championship.
And Super Bowl.
Then I went to the Super Bowl. Then I won a Super Bowl.
Well, then
he's got to get 50.
I got you. All right.
But what I'm saying is, are you really telling me that if he has another good year, maybe they get beat in the playoffs in the NFC Championship game, that then you're going to be able to get him for $33 million? Like, well, isn't it essentially the same quarterback? He just hasn't broken through in his first 3 years.
I'll give you that.
Like,
it'll be 40, 45. Whatever he's willing to ask for, I believe he gets at that point. If this team is still successful and he looks like the guy that he has, Steiny, I don't think there's nothing to see here. Like Tampa Bay has told us, and I'm the biggest Baker fan coming out of giving up, but I'm happy for him. But, man, if you're telling me this is what he's worth and $50 million guaranteed or 40 of that, he got $10 million against injury is guaranteed, that's the going rate.
But let's take it to the next. Let's take it to the next step.
Back up the Brinks.
Fine, back up the Brinks. Then you give him the Brinks. Okay, now you got to pick 2 stars to leave the team.
Right.
And now, like, to me, that's the part
we're here now.
That's the part that nobody can gauge. Nobody can gauge whether you're the biggest expert of all time or you're a novice football fan. We can judge what Brock Purdy is with a lot of weapons around him. The problem is you might have to pay him $40 million with 1 or 1.5 less weapons around him. So are you convinced that he's worth that much money if he's got if he's down a weapon or 2 that some other teams have to deal with because they're convinced their quarterback is an absolute beast and they can't go anywhere without him? I mean, like, that's not even whether you like Brock Purdy, whether you don't like Brock Purdy, whether you're a Niner fan or not. At the end of the year, they got a decision to make.
Oh, it's big.
And they're going to have to figure out how good they think Brock Purdy can be with not quite as good of a team around him. Because, like, how can they put a team around Brock Purdy that's better than it is now, but they're paying him $45 million? Like, that defies logic, really.
Well, you look at Deebo. What's he caught $28 million against the cap this year? You know, if Brock Purdy was to go out on a football field and not have, I'm just using Deebo as an example. You know what his skill set. Do you think his world crumbles, or could some look at it addition by subtraction? We saw Juwan Jennings, who is not Deebo Samuel, but we saw Brock Purdy make sweet music with him at times to keep drives alive, not just in the regular season, but in the playoffs, Donnie. So I just feel like all these things will play itself out, but it excites me because I love sports and the game within the game, but nobody can ignore the Brock Purdy factor of, you got a season to prepare for and a Super Bowl, but you're also playing for your money, son.